So that's Cultivator Motivation. So when we work for the benefit of sentient beings, sometimes the situation necessitates our stepping back, not policing or interfering with the situation, but rather working on our own minds because we see we have a strong affliction arising, or the mind is very critical and judgmental at that moment. So in those situations, we need to step back, not be so involved in the situation, and work on our mind. And then other situations, we're really called on to speak up and speak out and offer our ideas. If something is unjust, to say so. So, and then a third possibility is sometimes we have to do both of those. So it's a situation that requires us to contribute and be involved, but we also have to do so with a calm and collected mind. So it's not always easy to tell which of those three options or three ways of dealing with things is the best one in a certain situation. But again, we do our best. We learn from our mistakes. But underneath it all, it's important to keep our compassion steady for all the people involved in a situation, and to make sure that we apply mindfulness and introspective awareness to our own mental state and never get so involved in contributing or being active that we forget to monitor our own mind, because that becomes then quite dangerous. Okay, but in all of this, we have to keep our compassion, keep our mindfulness and introspective awareness, and not expect ourselves or others to be perfect. So that's how we practice now, and at the same time we aspire to become fully awakened Buddhas who have much more compassion and wisdom and versatility to handle various situations. So let's cultivate that mental state. Okay, so there's a few questions here we'll start with. So one of the visualizations in the sadhana has all sentient beings transforming into Manjushris, which then absorb into the D, which then becomes Manjushri. No, it absorbs into the D. It doesn't say. Manjushri is here. The D is at his heart. Oh, that's what they're talking about. Okay. Yeah, absorbs into the D, which then becomes okay. Okay. Yeah, I thought they were talking about the mantra. So the question is, does this show that the process of becoming omniscient involves tapping into the consciousnesses of all sentient beings with compassion? What does tapping into the consciousnesses of all sentient beings with compassion mean? If it means that you're radiating out light, that, we'll put it this way, the purpose of that part of the visualization is that, you imagine there's the essence of Manjushri's mind, and it's radiating the light, and Manjushri enlightens all the sentient beings. Okay, so they appear as Buddhas, as Manjushris, and then that all recollects into the D. Okay, so I'm not sure what tapping into other sentient beings' mind, what the person means by that. Whoever asked the question, could you? Yeah.
Just if you think of Manjushri as omniscient consciousness, then in order to know all phenomena, one way to do that might be to be able to connect with the minds of all sentient beings. And if you know what they know, then you know everything.
Oh, okay. An omniscient mind doesn't need to gather all the knowledge from sentient beings' minds. The omniscient mind knows what's going on in sentient beings' mind, but sentient beings' minds don't always perceive things correctly. So it's not like the Buddha's going to learn from all the wrong conceptions of the sentient beings. Okay, the Buddhas certainly reach out, and that visualization is touching all the sentient beings with compassion and imagining leading them to full awakening. Yeah, but a Buddha's omniscience comes about by itself from removing all the obstacles. Yeah, because the nature of the mind itself is to perceive things. So when we remove all the impediments, then the mind by itself knows all phenomena. Okay. Then there's the question, I'm experiencing sharp chest pains in the middle of the night. Is this lung, and how can I avoid or mitigate it? So are you doing the visualization with a lot of concentration of the heart? No? Okay. So don't do that, because, if you're putting a lot of energy at your heart center, then sometimes that can start, it becomes a little bit sensitive. So lung is like an imbalance of the subtle energies in the body. The chi in the body is out of whack. And there's different kinds of lung. The Tibetan medicine is good. We have some Tibetan medicine, you can take it. But otherwise, I think it's very helpful. Don't focus a lot here. Put your energy more on, bring your visualization more down here. Don't think too much. Sometimes, if your mind is just buzzing around with all sorts of, this and that, and what do I do? That just disturbs the mind too. So look at far distances, go out and look at the stars, go to the upper meadow and look wide, and and just relax the mind. So I don't know if what you have is lung or not. Maybe you have a heart condition. So I think just kind of relax and see what happens. But don't, it's important when you're meditating not to squeeze yourself, because that's one thing that can make things go out of whack. Okay, there's the D. And Hey, there's the light radiating out. I'm missing some light rays in the northwest. Let's get them, you know? And so your mind is, you're just like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's, another thing that causes this kind of imbalance. Yeah. So also go out, get some exercise, work in the forest. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Just to explain a little bit more, I find this visualization very powerful. Like it seems much more vivid than the other deities that I've meditated on. And I really feel the energy quite strongly coursing through my body. And I'm just wondering how to sort of dial that down. This morning I thought to myself, I need some sunglasses when I look at Manjushri. She's so bright. Like it just seems so powerful. Like,
yeah. So it's bright, but remember it's gentle. Yeah. Maybe the way it's appearing to you is a bit too intense or too shaky or something. So remember, it's brilliant, but it's so gentle and calm. Okay. Okay. Then somebody's saying, I really struggle with the idea of holding the mind in a state of equanimity when others reject or ignore my help and advice. How dare they? This just is not permitted in my rule book. Yeah. I see why and how it is the right approach intellectually, but emotionally, I just can't do it. Well, first of all, if you tell yourself you can't do it, then you won't be able to. So you have to tell yourself, I can do it, and I just have to learn how. Okay. But one thing that's good, if your mind is rebelling and saying, everybody has to listen to my advice and my instructions, and it is just not acceptable in this universe that people don't. Okay, so if that's what's going on in your mind, you have to check up, like, well, why in the world would I expect that? Yeah? Are there any valid reasons for expecting everybody to listen to my advice and instructions? Yeah. I don't listen to their advice and instructions. Yeah, in fact, I usually ignore them or tell them to be quiet or contradict them. So why do I think everybody has to listen to mine? Yeah. And why am I so sure that my advice and instructions are the one and only right ones? Okay. So there's some arrogance mixed up in here, don't you think? Yeah. So it's good to kind of look at that arrogance and, what valid reasons are there for having that? It's just my advice and opinions, that's all. One among many. They may be good. They may also be mistaken. They may not fit that person. One thing also to be aware of is that sometimes we are not the right person to tell somebody something. Okay? Just because of our former relationship with them, they can't hear it from us. So sometimes the most skillful thing to do is to make sure that there's other people who can transport that advice to them. Not necessarily that those other people go and say, well, so-and-so told me to tell you, because that's not going to work. But like when you raise kids, you make sure that your kids have other adults in their lives so that if something happens where you can't communicate with them so well, there's other adults who can talk to them, who they'll listen to, who they can open up with. Yeah? So in the same way, just to realize that sometimes we're not the right person. Yeah? You, a very good example is you break up with somebody and you see that person hurting, and you don't want them to hurt. Are you the right person to go and console them? Yeah. I mean, that's not going to work, is it? So, yeah. So you often have to just step back and, hope that somebody that person can communicate well comes and steps in and is able to help them. Yeah. But get used to people not listening to your advice. Yeah. And also think about His Holiness Dalai Lama. We usually think, oh, His Holiness, everybody has so much faith. Everybody follows his instructions. They are so respectful, like this in front of His Holiness. And then people go and do what they want. Okay? So if you think, they're going to listen to one person in this universe, not even the Dalai Lama. Did everybody listen to the Buddha when he was alive? No, he had disciples who criticized him, who turned their backs on him, who created ruckus in the Sangha. Yeah, so not everybody listens to the Buddha. Why in the world should they listen to me? Yeah, I'm not even an enlightened one. So that can help us kind of let go a bit. Otherwise, it's so frustrating, isn't it? Why don't they listen to me? Yeah. Especially when you know that they're going to do the opposite of what you told them. And then afterwards, after they fall on their face, they're going to come back to you and ask for help to get out of the jam that they're now in. Ooh. Yeah, kind of like we did to our parents. Yeah? Did you do that to your parents? They gave you advice sometimes, and you did the opposite, and you got in a mess, and then who do you call for help? Yeah? I was just visiting my sister and talking to to her and some of the friends there, and they're all telling stories about when their kids got drunk and then called them in the middle of the night, please come pick me up. Of course, after the parents had said, don't go drinking, don't be influenced by your friends, be careful of who you hang out with, don't stay out too late. And then the kids went and did that, and then they call mom and dad in the middle of that. Pick me up. And one of the mothers was saying, she picked her son up and he was throwing up the whole way in the car. Yeah. So, I mean, this is what we did to our parents. Maybe not quite that, but, along that line. And so why are we so surprised when other people do that to us? Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? We treat other people poorly, and then we're so astonished when they treat us that way. Yeah, why in the world would they act that way? Yeah. Like when people criticize us, why are they criticizing me? I didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, it's unfair. But those people, they're always so critical. They can never say anything nice about anybody. Every time you turn around, they are criticizing somebody. Criticize, criticize, criticize. They're so full of opinions. And then we're surprised when they criticize us after we just got done criticizing them. Yes, I know. I thought it was very good. Me neither. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I really praise my sister, that her kids, they tell her what they do, and what happens to them. It's amazing. Things I would never say to my parents. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I think quite good communication. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you look like you have a story, Matt.
When I was about 16, my mom, she was just imploring me, please tell me the truth about everything, because, I was a pathological liar. And, I found a way to take that to the extreme, too, where I would, share truths with her that she didn't want to hear. Like, she just told me to be honest, and I was like, I'm going to be extreme about it. So
Yeah.
there's more to it, is what I was thinking, than just open communication and trusting this. It's
Mm-hmm.
also like a lot of compassion and wisdom in what you share and what you don't share.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay, just one more comment, and then I want to get back to this.
Just another frame on the whole idea of giving advice. Sometimes if we do give advice and the person uses it and it doesn't work,
Mm-hmm.
then we become the reason that they didn't fix their problem, instead of somehow helping them to figure out what may work better for them than for us. And it puts a lot of responsibility on us when we're trying to give people advice.
Yeah.
And then they come back to us and say, well, what you said didn't work. Now what do I do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And so sometimes it's much better to get people to think for themselves and figure it out for themselves. Yeah. That reminded me of what you said, because we monastics have a precept not to engage in matchmaking. And it's for precisely that reason that when the relationship doesn't turn out well, they come back to you and complain. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, so I think we still have the seventh wisdom to do, huh? Okay, so please inspire me to generate the wisdom of composition, which uses perfect grammar and words and has the meaning of clear wisdom that gives joy to the minds of all sentient beings. Okay, so it has the wisdom of the clear wisdom of clear wisdom. Okay, and if we go back to clear wisdom, it understands the subtle and difficult points of the Dharma without confusion. So then, with this wisdom of composition, we're able to express the subtle and difficult points of the Dharma without confusion when we write. Okay? And so being able to find the right words, the right grammar, to express what is meant so that people don't misunderstand. Yeah? So if you're writing, that's very important. Otherwise, people read what you write and they get totally the wrong idea. And especially if you're writing the Dharma or teaching the Dharma and what you're teaching is incorrect or you don't express it well and people get the wrong idea, then that can be quite harmful to other people. Yeah. So that's why I always advise people, when you don't know the answer to a question, say, I don't know. Don't make something up. Okay? And don't humiliate the other person for asking a dumb question just because we can't answer it. Because that means it's probably a very good question and we're the dumb person. So here, when you're doing it, then you imagine invoking the Perfection of Wisdom sutras, because that's, you want the wisdom from the Perfection of Wisdom sutras. That's the wisdom that you want to express to other people. it's simple, there's other wisdom too, but that's the fundamental one. And then the Wheel of Swords was, to, like with the wisdom of debate, to courageously refute the damaging words and expression and express damaging words that express wrong ideas and misconceptions. So here, when you write, you want to not only have knowledge and wisdom regarding the subtle and difficult points, but you also want to be able to refute wrong conceptions and express things in a clear way so that people understand properly.
Wondering, is there a particular way that we're supposed to visualize the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, or just a book, or maybe like a Tibetan script?
Yeah, you could visualize it either way, as a Tibetan script, published in that form, or as a book published in the Western form. Okay. Okay, and then the concluding mantra visualization that you've been doing. So you imagine Manjushri's wisdom appearing as a D lying flat on your tongue, and you recite D 108 times in one breath, if possible, or until your breath runs out. Okay, and as you're doing that, you're imagining all the wisdom of Manjushri coming back and dissolving into that D. And then you silently swallow. You don't have to, it says swallow some saliva, but you don't have to make a particular effort to get some saliva. It's, don't all of a sudden, okay, I don't have any saliva, hold on, D, I got to get some. Don't go down yet. Don't worry about that part too much. And then you imagine the D on your tongue absorbing into your heart. And then immeasurable orange light rays radiate from the D, filling your entire body, purifying the destructive karma, the sickness, the hindrances. And then you think very clearly, I have received the special qualities of memory, which does not forget the words and meanings of the teachings, and of knowledge of all things past, present, and future. It's a lot of stuff to think that I have the ability to know that. But, you're really invoking Manjushri's energy into you to someday be able to do that. So in the Tibetan monasteries, after the wake-up bell rings in the morning, when everybody's running around, brushing their teeth and getting ready before they go to puja, they're all reciting Amar Pasindi, Amar Pasindi, Amar Pasindi. So that's what you hear in the whole monastery. It's kind of like, instead of hearing, what do you call them, the cicadas, the ones that chirp at night, yeah. Cicadas. Okay. So instead of hearing that, sound all through the monastery, like you do sometimes at night, you hear, Omar Pasindi, Omar Pasindi, Omar Pasindi, Omar Pasindi, and everybody's saying that. Because it's very nice to do when you first get up, to dispel the sleepiness and the ignorance. Because when we first wake up in the morning, ignorance tends to be the predominant affliction at that time.
As someone with not so great memory, I'm curious how memory works, because I always learned, the hippocampus is involved, or brain is related to memory. And so I'm just curious how doing this practice affects memory, and what creates good memory and bad memory. And I don't know if that relates to like Alzheimer's, when memory is destroyed, how that works.
Okay, well, the Tibetans and the Buddhists didn't know anything about the brain. Yeah, so there's no mention of the brain, helping with memory, or even of the body containing memory. So it's more a thing of the mind being bright and alert, and then able to recall things. So it's a lot of it depends on strengthening that mental factor of mindfulness. So it's a mental quality which you can increase through practice. Yeah. So how they do it in the monasteries is, like I was mentioning before, when they first come in, they start memorizing all sorts of stuff. Yeah, because when you're young, you can remember things. I can remember my telephone number from when I was 5 years old, but I can't remember my telephone number from before I lived at the place before I lived at the Abbey. Yeah, and so they really try and get you to remember a lot of things when you're little, and you then build up that mental factor.
Thank you. And if I may, so regarding Western science, would Tibetan Buddhists say that it's all due to mind, or does the brain offer conditions for gross consciousness?
Well, like I said, they don't talk about, just in Buddhism particularly, they don't talk about the brain. It's just, it's it's not a subject of discussion. Yeah. I mean, and in Western culture, it wasn't either until a few centuries ago when science started investigating the brain. But until then, even in our culture, nobody thought about the brain. Yeah. It's hard to think about that now, how much our culture has changed. And now, everything's the brain, the genes, everything's related physically. And I think that has to do with a shift in our culture to make everything physical. Yeah, we're obsessed with everything being tied to something physical. And so, just the whole idea of the mind, scientists are very puzzled by it. Yeah, they really don't understand what the mind is. Because for them, they're so used to thinking the brain. You feel angry, it means those, cells are firing. Yeah? You feel delight, it means you have more serotonin on those cells. Yeah? So that they're used to thinking that way. But in terms of their own experience, I asked one scientist once, and he was one of the guys who, was researching different emotions and where they're correlates in the brain. And I said, when you get angry, do you just say to yourself, oh, that's these brain cells over here firing, and they'll stop firing in a way, and do you calm yourself down by thinking like that? In other words, how do you apply what you're learning to your own life? He said, no. Yeah. But you should, if you think anger is simply what's going on in your brain, then when you get angry, you should just say, okay, it's this quadrant in this part of the brain firing. It's not really anger. There's nothing for me to get upset with. It's just those things firing. Isn't it? Isn't that how you should look at your anger? Oh, it's just those cells firing, nothing more. Then you have a Petri dish. Oh, look. We can see with the brain in it, okay? Oh, look, let's jab that part. Oh, look, that brain is experiencing jealousy now. Yeah? This is not our human lived experience, is it? Yeah? So I think the scientist-Buddha's dialogue is very important. And there's a lot of overlapping concerns, overlapping ways of communicating, overlapping ways of looking at things. But, His Holiness, went into all these scientific dialogues that are quite popular now, completely with nothing from the Buddhist side in terms of the brain. Yeah. So It's interesting, isn't it? Because we've been brought up in a certain way. It's kind of like how I was saying when I went to live at the monastery in Nepal, and I thought everybody likes democracy and should be democratic. And I was like, oh, these people don't think like that. So it's the same way. Oh, doesn't everybody trace their emotions back to brain functions? And doesn't everybody trace their personality tendencies back to their genes? And it's like, no. There's people who don't think like that at all. Okay. So I personally think there's some danger in linking everything with the body, because then it's so easy just to say, like finding genes that show that you're predisposed towards alcoholism. And just say, well, I'm an alcoholic, it runs in the family, I got those genes, what can I do? Pass me a drink. Yeah, so I think there can definitely be some downsides to that way of thinking. Yeah, personally, I think, we have to look at the whole thing, and there's correlates and so forth with the brain. But I don't think we can reduce everything that goes on in our mind to what's happening in the brain.
So continuing with developing this practice and developing that mental fortitude, what do you think would be the best way to go about practicing this sadhana, beyond this retreat? So like, best every day? And if so, multiple times a day? If you could only do it once per day, what time would be best?
Yeah, very good question. Thank you. Because that question shows that you really want to practice. Yes, practice it just as you're doing here. You don't need to change anything at all. Morning time is best because this practice helps wake you up and generate your intelligence so you can use it during the day. And to do something every day is always best because in that way you maintain it and you strengthen it over time. If you do this sadhana, for 5 hours on Saturday afternoon and then you don't do it for a week, then what you gained was lost. So it's better, something every day. Okay. And make sure you include the Lamrim meditation too. Yeah, because that's important to do some of that analytic meditation. Yeah, we have the outlines in the book, the guided meditations on the stages of the path. And so to do one of those meditations every day, or make up your own outlines, because after you've really done a practice like this to strengthen your intelligence, then imply your intelligence to meditate on some of the teachings that the Buddha said. Okay, so it's important to realize that Buddhist practice is not just about visualization and mantra recitation. Okay, you have to learn how to think properly.
So this is a question I've also been wondering with that, just not just visualization and mantra recitation. I've always tried to kind of understand what each syllable means, and I know that the translations from Sanskrit to English is always difficult, but could you maybe elaborate or expound on the meanings of each syllable?
I don't know them. Yeah. Is there
or if there's a reference or particular resource?
The interpretation of the meaning. Okay, so that's not going to tell you what each syllable is. It's the general feeling of I respect you who ripens the thoughts of all sentient beings. But the word sentient beings is not in Omara Patsanadi, so so I can't. Okay, yeah, so here it is. Okay, so that was the previous one was from Geshe Loden, and then this one is from Kant's. And he says, Om. Well, Om, yeah, is always at the beginning of mantras. It represents the Buddhist body, speech, and mind. Ah is the insight that all phenomena are primordially unproduced. That doesn't mean nothing arises. It means that things do not arise inherently. Ra means is the insight that all phenomena are stainless, meaning that none of them are inherently existent. Pa is the insight that all phenomena have been expounded in the ultimate sense. I guess that means that they have been explained, their ultimate nature has been explained. I'm just guessing there. Sa is the door to insight that the ceasing or arising of any phenomena cannot be apprehended because all phenomena do not cease or arise. So that's saying again that things do not arise and cease from inherently existent causes. And Na, the insight that the names of all phenomena have vanished. The essential nature behind names cannot be gained or lost. So that means that phenomena exist by being merely imputed, merely designated by the mind, and that the basis of designation and the object designated are not the same thing. And then D is Manjushri's seed syllable. Okay, so let's go back, because these are the 4 distortions that you want to cut when you're doing the Manjushri practice, among other wrong views. Okay, so we talked about the distortion of seeing things that are impermanent as permanent. Okay, so there's 2 levels of impermanence. One is the gross level that we can see with our eyes. Somebody dies, a house falls down, the computer falls apart, breaks, something like that. So that's gross impermanence. And then there's subtle impermanence, which means that everything is changing from one moment to the next. That everything is arising, abiding, and ceasing at the same time. We look at the glasses, and the glasses look like they're exactly the same from one moment to the next, even from one day to the next, don't they? So we look and, they haven't changed at all. But even science tells us on a molecular level that this whole thing is changing all the time. All the electrons are buzzing around, and certain molecules, when you rub it, are going off, and different things are absorbing, and nothing, even on the molecular level, everything is changing. And so that is a subtle kind of impermanence and what it means is that anything that is created by causes has the nature of not remaining the same in the next moment. Why? Because the causes go out of existence. Something arises when the cause is there. As soon as the cause produces the result, the cause has ceased. And the cause can no longer produce that result again. It already has. It's ceased. So, every moment is the effect of a previous moment, which was its cause, and then gives rise to a future moment, which is its result. And so that's this whole thing that when we talk about, something is impermanent because it's a product of causes, that's what it means, that nothing is remaining the same in the very next moment. Okay? So we say something, so if you choose one moment of something, intellectually you isolate one moment. Actually, how can we ever pinpoint one moment. Yeah, because it's gone. As soon as we try and pinpoint it. But intellectually, if you do that, okay, we say that it's arising, because it's the result of the previous moment. We say it's abiding, that same moment is not, it's arising from the perspective that it just came into existence depending on its cause, the previous moment. It's abiding in the sense that it is connected to the previous moment, it's similar to the previous moment, and it's disintegrating or ceasing at that same time, in that it is changing into something different in the next moment. Okay, so this is happening just on a level that is so tiny that we cannot isolate any moment where there is no change. Yeah. So it's very interesting. We always hear, be in the moment, be in the moment. Sit in your meditation and try and find the moment. Try and find now. See if you can find now. It's very interesting when you do that. Okay? But what this thing of impermanence is getting through to us is, first of all, that there is nothing stable. Everything depends on causes, and it's going to change by itself. So, of course, we can influence how things change. But even if we don't consciously influence it, just the fact that those things are produced by causes means they will change in the next moment. Okay? So, the garden grows, everything is growing, and the plants are changing moment by moment. We can pick something, and, that may stop the continuity of that plant, but then it becomes the continuity of the vegetable, and it joins the continuity of the soup, and then it joins the continuity of the caca, and then it joins, and it keeps going. It, gets transformed into different things. So, and so everything's changing like that. There's nothing that we can fix. And, hold, I got this. This is not going to change. Yeah. And so one reason why we meditate on impermanence so much like this is because it helps us loosen our attachment. Because being attached to things is based on holding them. Yeah? I like this. I'm going to hold it. I'm going to make sure it stays with me, okay? And that's impossible. It's impossible because everything that comes together goes apart. Yeah? And so when we get what we're attached to, we say, oh, I feel so satisfied and fulfilled. But the fact that that thing is impermanent means that that situation is going to change. And it's impossible for you to have that all the time. It's going to change. You're going to lose that object. And attachment doesn't want to lose it. And when we get separated from that object, then we experience pain, the pain of loss. So the more we hold on to something, as being, okay, it's like this and it's going to stay like this, then the more shocked and the greater the feeling of loss we have when the thing naturally decays or when we separate from it. Okay? So meditating on impermanence is an antidote to attachment because it helps us to see that there's nothing there to hold on to be attached to start with. Yeah. So one Dharma teacher expressed it in the sense of the glasses are already broken. the cup is already broken. Okay? Meaning, the cup, the glasses, everything, my body included, have the nature of change, and their disintegration is part of the bargain, and there's no way to stop it. And I should understand that, and then I won't cling to it and expect from it something that it can't deliver on. Because that's the problem with the attachment. We form a rigid idea, we expect this, and the object has no power to fulfill our expectation. And then we go, my life is falling apart.
This maybe to go into this like comprehensively is probably the scope's probably too big for this talk, but I think a lot about impermanence when it comes to grief, particularly death of loved ones, and trying to prepare for that. My mom died when I was a little kid, and so my dad's getting older, so I think a lot about how I'm going to handle that when that eventually happens. So if there's any practices that you could recommend.
I think just thinking about that and knowing that it's going to happen is very good. Because I started thinking about my parents' death years before they died. And then, and really thinking about them not being here and, and that relationship not continuing and so on. And to the point that when they died, it wasn't a big deal for me. I was able to focus more on thinking of them as some sentient being without a fixed personality who is now going into their next life, And so at death, the important thing is to help that person go into their next life. When we have a lot of attachment and that grief comes up strong, we can't help the other person. Yeah. So I think it's good, just to be aware that the people that we are close to, that we care about, are not going to live forever. Yeah. And we're not going to live forever. And, it doesn't mean something's wrong. It doesn't mean when somebody dies, there's fault or there's error or you're getting punished by God or something. This is just what the nature of things as they arise and cease. Yeah. So that helps us just relax more around it, especially if you think about it. And then, okay, when they die, it's like, well, I knew this was going to happen. I didn't know all the details, but I knew it was going to happen, and so I accept that.
I also think about this in relation to teachers, because our teachers won't always be with us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and as in the past couple of years, the health degeneration of health of some of the practitioners that I've looked up to and death, like Bob, and and it's and I look at His Holiness, and it this inspires me to practice more.
Yeah, and that's one of the blessings of meditating on impermanence, is we live with more vitality right now because we know that things are changing and that the opportunities we have now will not always be here. So we better use them when we have them.
So when I think about emptiness, so I get that my mind's constantly changing, my body's constantly changing. But then during this retreat, when I was thinking about it, I think I intuitively feel like there is something permanent.
Yes.
It's something that goes to life, doesn't change, almost like permanent, unitary, independent self.
Yep.
Like a soul.
We feel like that.
It feels that way.
Yep.
But then
Yep.
I'm not sure how to refute it, because doing the ultimate analysis of finding self, I don't trust that I'll find it even if it exists, because I can't find the karmic seeds that I'm carrying. It's like by doing the ultimate analysis.
Okay.
By doing the ultimate analysis, how can I trust myself to be able to detect
Okay.
self?
Okay. So instead of approaching it by trying to find that thing, ask yourselves, how does the I exist? Okay? And then, does the I, meaning the capital one, the one that's so important, me, how does that exist? Is it something that can be permanent, that doesn't change from moment to moment? And you sit there and you watch, and like, your body's changing moment to moment, your mind's changing moment to moment. Is there anything that you could identify as yourself that doesn't change moment to moment? Yeah. And there's really is nothing. But we get that idea, okay? So there's a real me. It's the idea of the self with a capital S, the idea of a soul. So it's found in many cultures, and there's different levels of it. They actually say, the Buddhists actually say, that the idea of a permanent, partless, independent self is something that isn't even innate. It's something we made up. It's like we heard about it in Sunday school. Somebody made up that idea that there's something that really is you that goes from life to life. And we believe that idea that somebody made up, okay? But below that, deeper than that, is just an innate feeling that there's a real me in there. Yeah? There's something that is the essence of me. Hold on. And so the feeling, there's something that is there that makes me me, that is not going to change, that doesn't rely on any other thing in the universe. It's just there, naturally existent. And it always has been and always will be. And, that's the essence of me. And we feel that. Yeah, we feel that so strongly. And yet, when we check how the person can exist, then we ask, how could something like that possibly exist? Because if there were some essence of me that never changed, then is it going to be some part of my body or some part of my mind or something separate from my body and mind? There's no other place to look. And my mind's changing all the time. My body's changing all the time. I don't always realize that, because there too, I think that there's something that's really my mind, and I think that there's something that's really my body. So then you start analyzing the body and mind too, and see if there's something that really is them. And again, what are you going to pinpoint? And then if you say, well, this permanent, this thing that is me is separate from my body and mind. My body and mind is just like a hotel. Body dies, the mind does something, and there's me left. Alone, existent. This, the impervious, impenetrable, indestructible. And then you say, what is that? What is that? What could that be? And every time we use the word I or me, we notice that it always points to something to do with our body and mind. It never really points to something that's separate. Even if you say there's the essence of me that goes on to the next life, yeah, even you say that, when you look, doesn't that essence of me-ness have a mind, have consciousness? It must have consciousness, because otherwise I wouldn't be aware of it being the essence of me. And me is a conscious being. Okay? So then that thing that I thought didn't depend on anything, it has a mind, it depends on consciousness. So is it really separate from everything else? And if it's permanent and doesn't change, then what in the world does it do? Yeah? If it goes from one life to the next life, but it doesn't change, what does it do? It just sits there? The essence of me sits there? Well, no, there's consciousness, there's mind in the essence of me, you know? But then that mind changes, doesn't it? As it thinks one thought and another thought and another thought, that mind is changing. Yeah. But this thing that I feel, the essence of me, impenetrable, indestructible, it can't change. But everything I think of that could be it changes. Yeah? You sit there and go, well, I feel this thing really exists. But it doesn't make much sense. It's kind of like, you know, in our life we've had many of our beliefs shattered. Maybe when you were a little kid you believed Santa Claus exists. Okay? Any of you when you were little believe that Santa exists? You know? For sure, Santa exists. And, you know, he goes down that chimney and he decides if you're good and bad and maybe gives you a present that you like and maybe your sibling gets a better thing. You know, that's because Santa's screwed up. But Santa's also in the shopping mall, so you can go and ask him there, you know. And then somehow he gets up to the North Pole and he gets on his reindeer sled, even though the ice is melting, and he makes it down here, you know. And when you're a little kid, it's like, this is reality. I believe this. And then what happens when one day you realize that's all a bunch of baloney? There's no Santa. Are you shocked? Yeah? I never grew up believing in Santa because I came from a Jewish family, so I knew from the beginning that was hooey. But you know, when those of you who believed in Santa, you know, do you remember a time when it really hit you that Santa doesn't exist? It's like, what? What? How can Santa not exist? And so then who perpetuates the idea of Santa? All the grown-ups who know Santa doesn't exist up here, but inside they want Santa to continue being there. So they teach it to their kids. They put on a beard and go in the shopping center. Yeah, it's the grown-ups that perpetuate Santa, isn't it? So even though you know Santa doesn't exist up here, what's going on in here? Oh, Santa is so cool, you know? Santa brings so much happiness. I'm going to talk about Santa to my kids. It's, you know, it doesn't hurt. But remember that time when there's no Santa and you're shocked. Wow, I believed that all the time. And it doesn't exist. So it's the same thing, we believe in this essence of meanness that doesn't change. And then we keep examining and examining it. And then someday it just kind of dawns that, like, wow, it isn't there. And I based my whole life on it. Yeah? I based my whole life on this big, fat lie that nobody else told me. I brought it with me from my previous life. So, this is one reason why realizing emptiness is not easy, because it entails dismantling this whole thing that we've spent eons building up. Yeah?
Can I ask a couple follow-up questions?
Yeah?
So one is, for me, it's still not clear how to logically refute this first level of the, permanent, partless, independent self. Because intuitively that feels right to me,
Yeah.
I realize. And the other thing is, the other one that I feel like I resonate quite a bit is the Chiramatran point of view, where the person is the foundational consciousness that goes from life to life.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not sure how to refute that either.
Yeah. Yeah. They kind of go together, except the foundational consciousness changes. Yeah, it changes. But it's, it collects all these seeds. And that works so nice because we can visualize this foundational consciousness. There's my foundational consciousness. This is who I am. And look at all those seeds there, And yeah, I'm here looking at my foundational consciousness. Who's me? Well, already something's wrong, isn't it? I'm out here looking at that thing that is me. But if that thing is me, it should be here. Yeah. But then, we like to concretize things. This is, it makes us feel secure. Yeah, it brings this sense of security. But even if you look at the idea of a foundational consciousness with all these imprints, what is a person with a consciousness? What is personal about a consciousness with a bunch of imprints and seeds in it? Because when we say me or person, there's a quality of something different, isn't there? Yeah. So sometimes, sure, we feel I am my body. But when we really think about it, no, the body isn't the person. Because the person, there's something personal about the person. The body's just a bunch of goo. Yeah? So even though sometimes we feel I am my body, we can also at other times recognize we are not our body. Okay. Also, because if we were our body, which body are we? The one that was conceived in the womb, the one that was born, the one that was 2 months old, the one that was 4 years old? Which body were we? Oh, I was all those bodies. But then, if the body's me and the body's changing and I'm all those things, but I'm not changing because there's this essence of me that doesn't change. But really, what does that essence of meanness do? What in the world does it do? Because something that's permanent, that doesn't interrelate with anything else, it can't do anything. Yeah. So then, there we are looking at, an invention of our own mind. that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, does that help? Yeah, think about it. Think about it. Yeah. It's like sometimes I don't know about you, but I think about me and how does the essence of meanness feel? Well, there's a me here. Yeah. And it's in control. It's conscious. It can examine things. It can make assessments. But what about when I have a fever? What happens to me at that point? Yeah, when you have you ever had a fever and been super confused because of the fever? Then who's the I at that point? That is steady and firm and independent of everything else and can always think clearly. In English. Yeah? Because all of a sudden, that person who I think I was can't think clearly. Yeah? And sometimes what's weird is when I lived in Italy, I was learning Italian, and I remember dreaming in Italian and going, who's dreaming in Italian? I speak English. But I'm dreaming in Italian. I subsequently forgot all my Italian. So, but there's this idea when I go into my next life that I'm going to sit there and I'm going to monitor all the stages in the death absorption and comment to myself, okay, this is this appearance, this is that appearance. All the commentaries going on in English. When I get into the bardo, I'm also going to be thinking about the bardo in English. Yeah. And then when I get born in my next life, I'm going to go, oh, now I'm getting born into my next life. Remember, it's going to be a little confusing at first because you're going to be, maybe you'll be in this womb and, and all this stuff, but just chill out. It'll be okay. You'll get born. And I'll be monitoring all of this in English, knowing exactly what's going on, describing the whole process. Yeah. There's that feeling like there's going to be somebody there. Yeah. I was like, okay, I'm a little sleepy now, but that's okay. I'll go to sleep and I'll wake up and, I'll have a mommy and daddy. So just chill out, don't get too afraid. Yeah. Is that really what's going to happen when I die? Is there really something there that's going to be there, that's going to do that? It's like, come on. Yeah, that is not going to happen. Yeah. So my mother, when I was a little kid, always used to say, who do you think you are, young lady? And it was a good question. Yeah. I never realized until years later that my mother was teaching me Madhyamaka theory. Yeah. But it's true. Who do I think I am? Yeah. So I'll leave you with that. Many of you have your hands up. Think about what has been said so far. Okay? Try and think about it on your own and go through some of these arguments and reflect on your own and try and, see how is it possible for your idea of who you are to exist? How does that I exist? So are you thinking that somehow, when you die, then you're going to come back, then you're still going to look this way. at this age. You're always going to be this age. And then we're going to go, oh, hi, I remember you from your last name. Your name is Angela, isn't it? In this life, too? That was your last nice name. Is this life, too? You're exactly the same. And you're still working in San Francisco?